All right then. Good afternoon. I think I got it right this time, right? Good afternoon. Yes. I'm working on it. It's slowly but surely it's getting easier and easier. How are you today, Brenda? Oh, she froze again. It's not just me, right? Let me check this stream health. Yeah. No, our stream health is fine. So, uh it's definitely on her end, which is unfortunate. We'll work around it. We'll do our best to work around that today. Oh, I know. And we could see you like freeze frames. Just don't stop and pick your nose. That might be the only thing that it catches. You'll be stuck that way. That's all we'll see. Well, so welcome to HEF in our live stream. We do these every Monday, right around noon. It seems like while PEP was going on, it was a very, very hot thing. We went from 3 or 4 people on the first one of these to like 10 or 15 people on the next one to 20, 30 people on the third and 70, 80 people on the ones after that. Now that PEP is settling down, I think people are kind of settling into their shop and their funds. They don't need us anymore, Brenda. Or at least they don't need the stream or the information. Right. Yeah, I wish. I hate the beach. It's all good. Um, well, last week we, yeah, well, that's true. Let me see here. Somebody texted me. I think it's probably, oh, um, last week we had some interesting conversation about HEF and kind of what it is that we do, some of the things that we work on. We did talk about PEP a little bit on that one as well, and we answered some questions, which we'll do on this one too. Oh, they can only hear me. That's right. Okay. Try that again. Well, that must have been really interesting. All right. Go ahead and speak, Brenda. Let me make sure sound check.
Well, what did we talk about last week that you want to pick up this week?
There we go. There we go. All right, cool. So last week we were talking about what HEF does in a lot of ways, what lobbying is, and I think in general, um, we were getting somewhere with some of the concepts, or at least talking about it. I think it's hard sometimes for it to land what it means to me until I hear a specific situation someone's gone through and how we've helped them through that situation, or us being there and being involved, what that did to move things forward. You said something off stream that I wish you had said on stream. You always say things when we're not rolling that I'm like, oh, I really hope she says that again. But in case you don't, I'm gonna lead with it so that you can pivot from it. But you said that the government is oiled with epoxy.
The
And it
wheels
took
of
a
government are oiled with epoxy.
it took a minute for that to sink in for me, and I was like, "Wow, that is that is a statement." Help us understand. You've been doing lobbying since 1980s, right, and onward. And there's a lot of families that you've helped in some very specific situations. There were key issues with laws changes and the legal matters maybe that people weren't aware of or updated on, and it can really cause some problems for families, and it can cause some problems for some of the agencies and some of the other people. Give us either like a unique example, or walk us into something specific. You mentioned some last week after we ended the stream, and I was like, Brenda, why didn't you talk about that one on the stream? That one just drove the message home. So I guess I'm saying drive the message home, but give me, you don't have to give people's names, if people wouldn't want that, but give me some of your real life experiences with this and how it's been impactful.
Relating to lobbying
Yes. And what you do.
and what I do. Um, well, sometimes issues are brought to me where parents are wanting certain opportunities for their children and they're not being able to get them. Or sometimes I'm aware of things that need to be changed in the law so that the law had to be changed in order for kids to have access to certain activities.
Right.
I don't remember the illustration that I gave you last week off camera.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can say things in person that maybe I don't want recorded,
Sure.
but it's a constant job because even after the legislature ends, whether it's in March or May, and they vary from year to year based on if it's an election year. So this year, session is January, February, will end the first week in March. And then after the session is over, the implementation starts because most of the bills that are passed that are new and maybe somewhat controversial,
Mm-hmm.
um, they have a tendency in the last few years to just try to get the concept and policy passed. And then they go, well, we'll come back the next year and fix the problems. I don't like to pass legislation like that. What I do is instead of just trying to get enough committee members on board because of which party they're in, if I have something that I am trying to get passed, let me just give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe would help.
Yes.
When a legislator decided that he thought it would be a good idea for the books for home educated students who are doing dual enrollment, um, that the state should pay for that. And he called me and he said, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm going to run a bill. Will you help me? I said, absolutely.
Okay.
So, so we worked together and got the bill drafted. And then just before the first committee meeting in the House, he called me and said, can you come in and talk to me because I want to make sure I have all my facts right? I said, sure. So I went in at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock. It's
Mm-hmm.
closer to two. Anyway, so I sat with him and he asked a bunch of questions about the funding and how all of this worked. And so we got those answered. And the last um, question he asked me, he said, it would just be great if you could get one Democrat to vote for us
Mm.
on this bill because typically Democrats don't vote for voucher bills.
Okay.
So in my brain, I'm thinking they're in committee meetings until 5 o'clock and then they go home. This
Okay.
particular year, they were cramming the committee meetings into a short window, so they were stacking them back to back. I knew the chances of me even catching one member before 5 o'clock was
Mm.
very slim.
Okay.
So I'm walking to the elevator because most of their offices are on the 10th, 11th, or 12th floor of the Capitol.
Okay.
And I was in the house. So I walked over to the Capitol. I do a lot of praying during session.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, Lord, there's no way I'm even going to catch one of them, let alone have time to talk to them about this bill.
Mm.
So you need to do something. So I got on the elevator. I'm standing there. Now, keep in mind, there are 12, let's see, yeah, 4 times 3, 12 elevator banks in the Capitol. So I get on one. The chances of anybody from one of the committees getting on the elevator at the same time I was on the elevator was about a -1 or 2, just
Yeah.
not going to happen. So the
Right.
doors seemed to stay open a little longer than normal. I mean, I was thinking it's time for these doors to close. I got to get up to the 12th floor.
Yeah.
And in walks the minority leader of the committee that the bill was going to be heard in the next day. And he stands right by me in a full elevator. So it's like, wow, okay, this is my chance. And I looked at him and I said, because they talk about these things before the committee meetings. They have, their Democrat caucus, and then they have the Republicans. And so they kind of get all the facts ahead of time and then decide how they're going to vote on bills.
Gotcha.
And I looked at him and I thought, Representative, I know that you are tagged everywhere you go in the Capitol, and I am so sorry to bother you, but I need 5 minutes of your time. Can you please spare me 5 minutes? And he stood there very stoically. He's like 6'3" or 4. And I'm thinking, oh dear, what is he thinking? He ignored me. And he didn't say anything. He just stood there. And then he looked at me and he said, why don't you come to the meeting before the meeting tomorrow and you can talk to all the Democrats at one time? And I thought, wow, thank you, Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big
So,
shift from how am I going to get to anyone to now I have access to everyone?
all of
Okay.
them, exactly.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
wasn't anything I was doing. I was just standing in the right place at the
There.
right time. And that's
Yeah.
happened to me more than this one incident where it was not even possible
Mhm.
for me to get to the right people. And lo and behold, they just appear at
Yeah.
the right place at the right time. So, anyway, I did, but I went immediately home from there. And we always need people to speak at committee meetings on whatever issue there is, because the faces of parents are much more effective than a lobbyist standing there saying things. Now, the lobbyist is key because the parents wouldn't have a clue when to come or what to say.
Yeah.
So I went home and I started calling people
Oh,
I knew
before you
and
keep
telling us,
going,
oh,
real quick, because what you said made me think of something.
okay.
And you said just being there physically is important. And it made me think of the verse in Ezekiel 23:22, where he says, I searched for a man among them to repair the wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land. And I think that it's one of those things that sometimes that's exactly what's needed, is just a person to be willing to be present and stand in that place and be there where other people are not. They're going about their lives, but we do need someone to stand in that gap physically. And I don't know, as you were talking, it made me think of that verse, and it kind of gave me a little bit of chills because I'm kind of watching through you telling me about this experience. I'm kind of watching the providence play out. Anyway, just keep going. I just wanted to
Well,
mark on that.
I've learned a lot from that passage in Nehemiah, because not only did Nehemiah put himself on the line, he could have been killed
Mm-hmm.
for being sad in the presence of the king,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
he was the cupbearer to the king and he was going to
Yep.
taste everything that the king was going to eat before the king ate it. And anybody died, it would be in Nehemiah. And it
Yep.
wasn't appropriate for him to be sad in the
Yep.
presence of the king. So even though we're not going to get killed as lobbyists,
Yeah.
many
We hope
times,
not.
many times going against the
The grain.
people who would not be supportive of the bill, sometimes you feel like you're going to be shot down or
Yeah. Yeah.
attacked or whatever. I mean, but Nehemiah's approach was always appeal. And the appeal is one of the qualities that I've learned during the session. Some people want to come up and demand, you work for us and you need to do da 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 da. But my
Mm.
mom always taught me you catch more flies with
Flies with
honey
honey.
than vinegar.
Yep.
And so, even though people don't agree with you initially, it's your job to help answer their questions, educate them, and help them to see your side of the story. So
Yeah.
that's what I was going to do with this committee. Well, fortunately, over the years, I've not only represented homeschoolers, I've represented parents who direct their education into private schools, into now the PEP program. Basically, I'm representing the parents that don't have their kids in public school. So it's all parent directed education that would
Yeah.
affect them. So I've worked on a lot of issues over the years, some very, very intense one where I sided with the school board or
Mm.
where I sided with those people working in the school districts because I could see their point of view. And I've built relationships by working with the enemy. We
Right,
sometimes
right,
see
right.
those people that don't agree with us
Right.
as enemies. I don't see them that
Yeah.
way. I see them doing a job, and sometimes they don't have all the information they need to make a good decision, but they need to see both sides of the coin.
Sure.
So, anyway, I went home. I tried to find some parents who would be able to come and speak to the issue of how expensive dual enrollment books are and what it causes them to be able to provide it. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have a list of parents like we're starting now
Right.
in our website where
Mm-hmm.
we can identify parents who are willing to come and speak before the committees if we need them. That's a huge help going forward. Um, the other thing that we have are ambassadors, and we haven't yet defined what those ambassadors are going to be doing. But one thing they're going to be doing is helping us find those people if we need a specific person to speak on issues. So they would sort of be representing an area of Florida, or they're going to be representing the Facebook groups that they're on. Heaven knows I don't have time to be on Facebook and watch all of that. So I'm grateful for Crystal because she's kind of monitoring all of that
Mm-hmm.
just to the extent that she can. But we need a lot of parents who are going to be willing to do that. And
Sure.
so we're looking for ambassadors that can help us identify people in the state, whatever means they connect with us on those Facebook pages, and put out the word and then
That's
help
very
us raise
important.
funds to support somebody who's going to take over for me. We think we've identified those people, but we've got a few more things to work out.
That's very important. And I think to add on to that, that not just looking out for those people who can help us amplify the voice in the Capitol, but there are specific situations in which you're the key person that can help, right? We've been getting a ton of questions about Step Up, right? Ultimately, we're not the customer service arm of Step Up. There are certain moments where something is stuck or this. I mean, a lot of it has just come down to like if we can be patient, it'll all get the system will kind of eventually get it worked out. The epoxy oiled systems will eventually get worked out, right? But there are other situations where not so. If there's something very specific and someone's refusing, or there's a there's an agent in a certain position who is not kind, doesn't like home education, doesn't like it's just there's a situation. You were telling me about one last week. I don't know all the specifics, so I'm speaking in generalities, but those those situations are also key moments, which you know it's good for us to know about them in whatever ways we can help about them. So those are good stories or circumstances that if you hear of one going on to share with us, right?
Those are behind the scenes issues that I don't generally report
Mm-hmm.
because it deals with specific people, specific people in the agencies that I don't want to put those names out there because I don't want every homeschooler in the state calling them when they have a problem. They just like Step Up, they have a job to do. But if they got to answer the phones and take 100 phone calls a day from parents, they can't get their job done. So I'm very careful about giving names and contacts in the state agencies or even the legislature, unless I know that connection is exactly what that parent needs. And I trust that they're not sharing it on live streams all over the
Right.
state or
Yeah.
even their Facebook pages,
Sure.
because those are specific things that
Yep.
I'm careful about giving out that kind of information.
Yeah, of course, to be respectful of their privacy. Melissa Stanchek says, Brenda, I am so thankful for how you serve the homeschool community. It has been such a blessing to our family. I was talking to a friend and she mentioned that you should speak at the FPEA homeschool conference in Orlando. What do you think? That would be a great opportunity for people to know what you do because personally, I have never heard of HEF before and I have been homeschooling for 8 years. So, Melissa, I'm going to take a moment and share this screen, which is a thanks to our top sponsors, one of which is actually FPEA. And I can't say for certain who their speakers are going to be, but there's a very real possibility that we're among them when the time comes. We're even throwing around the idea of putting like a panel together where similar to what we're doing here could be done there, maybe on a more hot button issue that arises when that time happens. Like this year at PEP was huge. That's all anyone wanted to talk about, right? And that kind of happens. It's nice to have the people working on those um, on that language to speak on it. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility. We know them. They support us, so it's good, and we thank them for their support. We appreciate that. So I can't speak and say yes affirmatively, but there's a great opportunity. So if you haven't bought your tickets, try to go ahead and get them. I'll chill a little bit for them as well. Anyway, back to if you guys have questions, by the way, this is our Q&A session. So if you guys do have questions, if there's something that you want to ask, go ahead and ask it. We do have one that has come in. Real quick, I'll mention it. It says, I have one kid that switched to FTC PEP and not switched to FTC PEP for over a month now, and my one daughter has been switched while my other stayed at FESEO. I've put in tickets with SUFS. I've asked to speak to supervisor a couple of times. I've redone the PEP specific portions multiple times. That actually might be the problem. Um, every time you touch the application, it kicks it back to restart it, and then it gets thrown back into a sort pile and then duplicated or triplicated, and they have to go through and every
They have
parent
to
who's doing that
manually track those down.
to
The ones
manually
that have
track all
been.
of these changes now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anywho, the question is that I was just told by Step Up for Students rep to contact the DOE. Is that what I should do? Now what? I feel stuck. So, do you have any recommendations or answers for her? That's Delene. She's been on our stream a number of times.
So the latest information that I have from Step Up is that they are manually having to comb through and correct all of those accounts. It is taking time. I know that they fixed a bunch last week,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that they're kind of doing it on a weekly basis. So they're probably combing through again and planning to switch more people over this week.
They
If you've submitted all the tickets and you've done all the things, the only other thing to do is if you really think that something is stuck and there is like, a glitch that something is getting missed, I can reach out to the contact that I have and ask her to just check it. And then I can get back to you. So I know, Delene, I know we've seen you on the stream before and you're probably in our forums, but if you want to shoot me your information, they're going to want your email address and your first and last name and maybe the name of the child who's stuck, and I can try to look into that. But as Jason said, we aren't Step Up customer support, so all I
right.
can do is kind of ask for
Yeah.
it to be investigated, and then they may come back and say, we're just still working through them and she's going to have to wait.
Yeah.
But
That specific issue is something that they very
yeah.
specifically stated was something they were working on. And they said that if you have one that was approved, you'll have the other
Yes.
because it's based on the application. So eventually, they said that they would be getting to all of them, but they also had to manually comb through all of them to figure out which ones that had been impacted. But also, every time you touch your application, it resubmits it. That's the way
Yeah,
the
I would
system
say
works.
make sure you're not editing your application any
Yeah.
further, because it does, in their system, it kicks it back as if it's a new application. They can still see the date that you originally submitted, but they have to go manually fix that because the
Mhm.
system kicks it back as if it's new every time the application is edited. But I know that you've been waiting a long time because I've seen your comments.
Yeah,
So
we've been doing that.
it's possible that something on yours actually did get stuck. So if that's the only reason I'm saying, if you want to send me your information, I can message them and ask them
You
about
know,
it.
yeah, ask at least. All right. So if
So,
there are more PEP related questions, you can ask them here too. That's fine.
so let me
But we,
finish my story,
yeah,
Jason.
I was gonna say I want to get back to what Brenda was talking about.
So I spent the rest of the day up until midnight trying to locate parents who would be willing to come and basically writing their speech because they didn't know specifically what to say. And I wanted to make sure that the right points were brought up in the committee meeting. So the next day, the committee meeting
Mm.
was occurring around noon. And between meeting the families who were going to come and speak at the committee meeting, I went to the meeting before the meeting with the Democrats, and I walked in, and the teachers union lobbyist was across the room. It was a very small conference room. I said, "Well, hello," and called his name. I said, "So nice to see you. You're not going to love this bill, but it's not going to take any money out of the school district." He goes, "Okay, I'm fine with it then." And we had worked together on other issues, so we had built a good relationship. And so then when they opened up the floor for me to speak, I explained how the bill was supposed to work and that it didn't take money out of the school districts, and that parents really needed this help because books are very expensive. So they excused me and I left and went to meet my parents and got them in the committee meeting. And then I had one fabulous mom who had done her own research and she had kept very good records, i.e., portfolios and receipts. And she wasn't getting any money at that time. She just meticulous like that.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so she gave exact examples of what the book cost, where she said, and homeschoolers are very resourceful. She said, I looked and looked and I finally found the books used at this particular place. And it was about half the cost, and how she went about getting those books. And she went through a list of, several books, which you could tell was $1,000 to $1,500 it would have cost. And she said, and I have two children in dual enrollment. So we live on one income. My husband is a school teacher. He doesn't make that much money, and
Mm.
we've learned how to stretch the dollar as far as it will
Yep.
go. And so she said, and this would just be a huge blessing to our family if the state would pay for the books.
Mm.
So she sat down. We had somebody involved in actually doing dual enrollment, and then a parent whose child was in dual enrollment. That's all we had. We didn't need a flood of parents up there demanding or whatever. We just needed to present the facts.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
they sat down, and at the end of all of the public testimony, they give the committee members an opportunity to say something
Okay.
about the bill. And so the minority leader on the committee that I'd met in the elevator
Yeah.
said, I had no idea that homeschoolers had to pay for all their curriculum. I had no idea how difficult it was and how expensive it is. And I think that we should support them and we should provide those books.
Mm.
I'm going to vote in support of the bill. Well, when the vote came, every Democrat voted
Wow.
in favor of the bill. And the
Wow.
sponsor came
Wow.
to me
You needed one.
afterwards.
You needed one. You needed
I
one or
needed
two.
one. I got
Yeah.
about 8 on that committee. And the
Wow.
sponsor came to me afterwards and he said, "Wow, how did you do that?" I said, "Well, you know, I was just the messenger
Right.
and God fought the
Yeah.
battle and I just picked up the spoils." So it was an
There you go.
amazing experience, and it wasn't the first time that happened. But every time we have a
Nice.
bill up that is going to affect parents, prior to that committee meeting, I go around and talk to every single committee member prior to that to make sure I have explained to them the bill, the funding, and how this is going to affect. And then ask them questions. What do you have any questions about the bill? And build a rapport with them so that they go into the committee not asking random questions off the cuff because they haven't thought about the bill. And
Yeah.
generally, we don't have any negative questions when I'm working a bill because I've already anticipated the questions and
Yeah.
met with them and clarified.
Interesting.
And it just makes all the difference in the world. You cannot do that for Miami. You could, but you'd
No.
have to come to
Well,
Tallahassee to meet with them, and that's very expensive.
yeah,
So,
there's a lot of back and forth involved in that. It's not something
right.
you just pick up a phone and make happen. You're right. That's interesting. Somebody says that's awesome. That's the Lord. Praise. Yeah. Good, good, good. Well, yeah. So things like that are what I would like to maybe share as we move forward and mix in with some of the other stuff that's important or hot topic that comes up because it gives an idea. It gives people an idea of one, what the needs are, and two, how they're being met. Because I think that it's real easy. We even say this on our on the homepage, like everything is fine until it's not, right? And then it's like who can fix it? And if it's your toilet and it's a plumber, you can call any of them. In the they're all over Google. You might know five on your street or something, you know. But when it comes to stuff like this, it's highly specialized. It takes people who have a heart for it, care. It takes a lot of sacrifice and behind the scenes work that no one ever praises or ever sees. And there's also a lot about it that is God working. But it's one of those things that we don't know we need it until we do, and then by that time, it's probably too late. You know, when something is in motion and has momentum, things have to be being worked on all along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I work with staff when I read a bill and I see there's a word in there that could affect us negatively or that it wouldn't play out the way they thought it was. Nobody's
Right.
trying that I know of trying to do any harm, but they
Right.
just don't know all the specifics. And so I'll go fight for one word to be changed with
Yes.
staff. Most of the time they listen to me. Sometimes they're super invested in the way the bill is written and they don't want to change anything. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're being way too critical. It's like, well, I want to make sure it says in the law parents can choose the curriculum. Well, they can. Well, say it then.
Yeah.
Say it in the bill so that we
Yep.
have ground to stand on. If you don't say it in the law, we have nothing to stand on. So
Right.
eventually, you
Yep.
know, I'm persistent. I guess my best quality is I know how to drip and drip
Yes.
like
Yes.
a leaky
Yes.
faucet.
Like
Until
yeah.
finally
Yeah.
they go, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, we'll do it.
Yeah. 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 So you're torture people? Is that what
Uh,
you're saying?
yeah, maybe not waterboarding them, but definitely hitting them with water.
I love you. I'm just teasing. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that one with us. Today might be a little bit shorter. I know it's Columbus Day and Indigenous People Day, apparently. Um, that's a thing. I know that like a lot of other agencies are closed. People probably out on the beach, to be honest with you, if they have the day off. No, I don't know what that means. Some of our clients from our marketing firm are uh, agencies or institutions in the city of Tampa or stuff like that. So a lot of our clients are closed for today as well. So it kind of creates a little bit of slowness, but we have some project deadlines that we've got to get to. So that is on the back burner at the moment. I'm not seeing any additional questions come in. There's one. There was one actually. Hold on. She says, "I have a question. I have a friend who has children in private school for 3 days a week, and she was trying to petition to the Department of Education to allow them to use PEP funds for that school. I think the school is an accredited private school. What are your thoughts on how to go about it? to allow those homeschoolers to use PEP funds? I think that's actually already been answered in legislation. That was Melissa.
Well, going back to one word, the legislature insisted that those schools be eligible private schools.
Right.
And what does that one word mean? That means that that school has chosen to take scholarship students. And if they
Mhm.
have chosen to take scholarship students, then that private school has to jump through a bunch of hoops that the department is going to check before they approve them as an eligible school. Accreditation has nothing to do with this.
Yeah,
It
so
has
slow
to
down.
do, oh,
Very first, the school has to want to. They have to choose it, right? So that's the first barrier is does the school want to take the students? If yes, then what? Right, keep going.
well, then they come under a lot of audit situations.
Yep.
So those are all spelled out in statute, and it's 1002.421, and it's called private schools participating in scholarship programs, and that's what it relates to. They
Got
have to
you.
prove they've had a fire inspection. They have to prove they've had
Radon.
radon and health department
There's a
inspections.
checklist of things.
Yes.
Okay. And once they do all of that and they get approved, eligible, sorry, they become eligible,
Right.
then what? What's the next step?
Well, then they get on the list of eligible schools so that parents can submit either a reimbursement ticket to the scholarship funding organization, or Crystal will probably be able to answer this better because I don't look at the Step Up for Students website as often as she does. But they should be on a list of approved providers.
Yeah, they
And
would have to request to be added to the provider list. There's a whole application on Step Up's website that once they've become eligible, I think they still need to go to Step Up and say, hey, we'd like to be added to this provider list. And there's a form that they would need to fill out for that.
So, in regards of petitioning the Department of Education to make that possible, that's not necessarily needed because it's already in statute, correct? There's a path for
There's
that
a process.
exists already. Yeah. Cool.
The other thing to mention is that the school might want to look at how they have them marked in terms of enrollment, just to make sure there's no issues with them using PEP, because you can't be enrolled as a private school student according to the state statutes and still be under PEP. So
Right.
you can
Right.
take part-time classes at a private school if it's an eligible one as a PEP student. But so just another thing to, make sure that parent is aware of, that it matters how the school has their student enrolled as well.
Got you. That's good and good answers. Denise Campbell asks, are they still funding in waves at this point as the county's change to PEP status? Was notified by the county of our PEP change, but there has been no funding yet. So I think the answer to that is yes.
As far as I know, yes. The last I heard, the people that were supposed to be approved for Q1 funding but had just sort of fallen into a glitch are being funded for Q1, but they're being funded late, and they're being funded in waves as they kind of get batches to process. So as far as I know, yes, they are still working on making sure everybody who should have been funded for Q1 gets funded.
Cool. I don't have any additional questions that have come in yet, so we'll continue to watch that for a couple more minutes. But yeah, it's very interesting. Did you want to go back and finish anything in your examples of what you were giving, or are you?
no, I just thought it was really amazing that we got a unanimous vote on the committee. This bill sponsor did too. It was not what at all he expected.
Yeah,
So,
that is wild. It's funny to me that you needed one, and in the elevator walks one, and that through that one
but
became all, right?
he was like the head of the
He was
Democrats on that.
he
Yeah,
won.
It wasn't just
yeah,
a Democrat; it
yeah.
was the Democrat I needed to
It
speak to.
was very much like a Nehemiah moment, almost, where it's like I needed one, and through that one, this happened. It's wild to me. It gives me chill bumps to think about. What are what if you weren't there doing this, Brenda?
Yeah, that definitely speaks to the importance of having a lobbyist in the Capitol, physically there in the Capitol.
What if we're like, hey, our laws are fine. They're not gonna do that. We don't need that.
Well, back in the day, you want me to tell another story?
Yeah, we got time. We got a little bit of time left.
Back in the day, before everything being on computers and being able to follow them without being physically present, I
Hmm.
was, although, the story I just told, it was online and everybody could follow it, but the bills often have spots where you can input into it before it becomes public. And so
Okay,
you're not going to see those bills online until they become public. And at that point, the language is already written out there. It's a little
gotcha.
harder to get the changes in at that point than it is if you can get to them before.
Okay.
But anyway, back in the day when there were no computers, there was a
Hmm.
bill that was passed, and we were not aware of it until I was working in Representative Daniel Webster's office during session in order to be able to keep up with what was going on. So I was listening to the bills on the floor as they were debating the bills on second reading, and I heard them talking about an abuse bill that they were passing. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a place where they could put something about home education in that bill. I went and pulled the bill number. Sure enough, they had the whole home education law in that bill. Now, we were able to follow the education committee, but this
Wait, so
was in
you were concerned that you simply heard that, and then were concerned they might slip something about home education in that section.
correct.
And then when you went and looked, that's exactly what you found was
They had the whole home education law in that bill. But
wow.
we were following education and keeping up by being present in that group of bills. But
Yeah,
this bill was introduced in Health and Human Services. So I was not attending those committees. You can't attend but just
right.
so many committees.
Yeah,
Some of them are occurring at the same time.
same
And
time.
so when I heard
Oof.
that, I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to do something. But we weren't able to impact it that year because it was too late in the process.
Mm.
The bill did pass, and then our next step was to go to the Department of Education and try to impact the implementation of the bill. And their plan was, because if it's not specifically spelled out in statute, then the bills are referred to the departments that implement those bills, and then they write rules on how this is going to be implemented.
So Vicky
So,
Vicky adds that back then the mindset was, because you didn't mention this, so I'll hit on it why it's important. The mindset was that abused kids were being hidden through homeschooling.
correct.
Okay.
We
And
also
so
had
that's why they were trying to put home education uh, laws in that abuse bill.
they wanted to make sure that no child abuser was approved to home educate their child.
Ooh.
And it wasn't specifically an
Mm.
attack on home education. It started out being an attack on nursing homes that were abusing um, elderly people in nursing homes. And then they
Wow.
started looking at, oh, where else could abuse occur and blah, blah, blah. And then all these other opportunities for abuse was brought into this bill. So they
Okay.
didn't directly go after homeschoolers. It was just kind of like, well, here we could
Progressive.
be
Yeah.
hiding them in
Wow.
a home and, whatever parents do to abuse their children. So,
Right.
um,
Wow.
so my husband then went to the DOE and he said, so how are you planning on implementing this? He said, well, we're going to run every home education parent's name through the child abuse register prior to giving them approval to home educate. And he goes, no, you're not going to do that
Hmm.
because parents have a right to home educate their children under the law. And we're not going to ask for approval to do that. So he said, well, what do you suggest we do? And my husband said, well, I think we're going to just have to take parents' word for it. So I will write an affidavit that parents will need to sign and provide to the school district. And they can just swear that they've never been convicted of child abuse. And so for about 2 years, that's what parents had to go through. It was 2 years because the person that had sponsored that bill lost her election, went home. She was an attorney and she went to court to see how her bill was working out and found out this is another Democrat, found out that the bill wasn't working like she had envisioned it to work. And
Okay.
so she came back 2 years later. She re won her election and was back in the Capitol. And she decided she was going to fix the problems in the bill. Well, we were trying to get to her to get this taken out, but we couldn't. So again, it's in the middle of session. The bill was being discussed on the floor, and there were other groups that had tried to get it removed, but lobbying is all about timing. You have to hit the
Yeah.
issue at the right time. And I was in the minority office, which was the Republican office, trying to listen to what was going on the floor because we didn't have the
Hmm.
computers. So you had to be somewhere to hear what was going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so as I'm standing in that room, and I'd already talked to this representative about the issue. In fact, I had talked him out of doing it the previous session because it was not the right time to do it. And so, again, he shouldn't have been in the Republican office. He should have been on the floor debating, but he needed something for a bill that he was going to have to speak on later. So he ran up to the office
Hmm.
off the floor. I'm standing there as he comes in, and I go, Representative, this is the perfect time to remove the child abuse stuff from the home education law. And he looked at me and he goes, it's too late to do that. I said, oh no, it's not too late. You can do this. I know you can. He goes, okay, I tell you what, I'll go talk to the representative who's sponsoring this bill, who's the one that originally put it in the bill. You go talk to the committee members, to the committee that would draft the language, and I'll call them and tell them you're coming up there so you can tell them exactly how it needs to be written to get an amendment to take this portion out. I said, okay, that's a deal. I don't want to talk to her on the floor anyway. So I went to the committee, he went to the floor, and it was the perfect opportunity because it was a last minute filed amendment where people didn't have time to pore over the wording. They just had to make a decision on the floor. And the committee and the bill sponsor was okay with it, being a Democrat. So when she approved for this late filed amendment to go on the bill to remove that language from the home education law, all the Democrats thought it was okay because she had approved it. So the amendment came up, it was voted on, it passed, and that amendment took the language out of the home education law, and voila, it was done. But
Wow.
standing in the right place at the right
The right
time
time.
in the
Being there
Capitol.
physically. It's not something you can teledo, right? Like be a teleconference or teleparticipate. Like, man, then you wouldn't be telling me this right now. Brenda, that's I wanted to stop you so many times, but I'm trying to be respectful
And
and not
the
do that. Go ahead. I
I
think she
think she
froze.
froze again. Yeah.
We'll wait for her to come back. Yeah, it's just it blows my mind, Crystal, that there's so many key moments in that required someone to push or insert or be. And I want to say how lucky we are, but it doesn't really have anything to do with luck that there was someone there, looking for that very specific thing. Even the fact that that wasn't even the committee, for home education or education. It was a completely different committee. And it was like, oh, we hear about that. Two years later, it comes back up, and person not where they're supposed to be happens to be where Brenda is, and happens to have the right moment to intersect. Like they're yes, there it's God, but it's also having a person available, being there, and it matters. It matters a lot. I love that whenever he pushed back and was like, we don't have time. That it wasn't like, well, let's wait a couple more years and see if it comes up again. You know, you pushed back. You pushed back. Like you, that's that whole idea of like standing in the gap. Like no, 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 no. This is where we stand. Like here's the moment, and I love how you do it in an appeal rather than in a forceful demand. Uh, that's in your nature. Part of that's in your nature, which is
But also
nice.
with the confidence to say something like, "No, this is the perfect time."
Right.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
no backed down, but the appeal is firm and out there as an appeal, but it's also not going
I
anywhere.
wonder if these legislators ever
Love.
wonder like why Brenda just shows up everywhere. They're like, she just
Oh my word!
somehow
You
appears everywhere.
you think about the Old Testament and Elijah, and it's like this dude, this man of God, just appears places at times and starts talking about stuff, and then things happen. Like what is?
Well, it's interesting because in the Capitol, even if I haven't met people, they know I lobby for home education. And I have had in the past where somebody was trying to push a bill that was not something that would have been beneficial to homeschoolers in the law. They thought it was, but it wasn't. And I've had several legislators stop me in the hall and say, have you read House Bill, whatever it is? And I go,
Mm.
yes. And they said, so what's your opinion on that bill? I said, it's not good for homeschoolers. It really would
Oh,
make
she
it
froze. Okay.
easier for the districts to come after schoolers if you put that language in the bill. And they go,
Mm.
okay, we won't support the bill. But I mean, I'm in the
So you've got a
hall.
reputation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a consistent voice, and they know what I represent. I represent parents' interest in private education. Whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it private schools, PEP, home
Mm.
education, they know that's what I represent. And I've been there on these bills so often. They're very, even extracurricular activities. They recognize that I'm the voice.
Yeah. I think that's really something that I see in you too, and I'm thankful for. Uh, I didn't know who you were, much like the person in our comments said. I honestly didn't know. I know I was introduced to you a couple of years ago by Dina, and we met. I think I had had a car accident in my back. I was barely. It was embarrassing actually because I dropped a bottle of water and I couldn't bend over and pick it up because my back was so thrown out that my knees would just buckle whenever the pain would hit. And you reached down and just picked it up like no worries and just handed it to me, and I felt completely emasculated. Thank you for that. I've never forgotten our first meeting,
Sorry.
but I still didn't know much about you. I'm like, oh yeah, she's she's important. She does a lot of things. That's great. And then the more I looked into it, and the more I heard about it, the more I listened to you, the more I listened to everything that you've done, everything that HEF has been also responsible for doing, and the needs and being there as they come. It I want to say it just broke my heart. Like it's one of those things that I felt completely passionate about. That's necessary. That is worth it, and it's what drew me to working with you. To be honest, and it's a lot of work, but I feel so blessed to be a part of it. So I want to tell you thank you for that, but also thank you for you, because I know it's also not something you have wanted to always do. There were many times you actually wanted to be done. You're like, okay, I'm done. Like my kids are gone, they're through. I'm done. I did my part. I'm done. And you have a heart, and you get pulled back in, and you stand in that gap, and it's time for others to do that as well. So hopefully, as we're building this and we're transitioning from Brenda to HEF, many hands make light work. We can keep that same presence there. Um, and you can guide for as long as you want to, and we will stay led by God and voiced in the capital. So, all right, enough of that. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Just that we represent all parents, regardless of what your religious beliefs are,
Yeah,
regardless of what your reasons are
true,
for home educating your children. We
true.
believe very strongly that home education and other scholarships is a parental right.
Yes,
And we want to keep it that way in Florida. We want all parents to be able to guide the education of their children, because honestly, this morning I was in a discussion with some ABA therapists, and I've forgotten what the actual title is, but they're supervising the technicians that are implementing ABA therapy for children with disabilities. And
okay.
um, and we were discussing some of the problems that these children are having in private schools, even schools that are designed to serve children with disabilities. And I just said, I believe that children with disabilities do better at home than they do in a classroom or school setting. Um, and to my surprise, the ABA therapist said, I strongly believe in home education,
Wow,
and
good.
that these children do better because parents can be consistent. They don't have one teacher, even if it's a great ratio of 1 to 5.
Right.
The teacher cannot do what one parent on one child can do. There's just no way. I've always believed in
Yeah.
the tutor method of of education, where you have one teacher tutoring one child, and a parent can do it with more children, but your ratio of 1 to 1 is a better ratio than 1 to 10, 1 to 20, whatever the
Yep.
classroom component is. And you
Right.
don't have all the distractions that you get in a classroom. So I just think that's the way our founding fathers were educated. If it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for us. But the
Yeah, I
parent's the
agree.
one that makes that decision. I mean, if they decide to send them to a public school and that works for their child, then fine, that's your choice.
Right.
I don't try to make parents home educate their children,
Right.
because the thing that makes home education successful, and this was something that the person in DOE who was over home education at the time said, and he said it publicly. It's not the education of the parent, it's not how much money that is spent on the education, it's the commitment of the
Correct.
parent that makes
Yes.
home education successful.
Yes. 100% yes. That's powerful. Absolutely. Well, we have 10 lovely, loyal people who have been with us this entire time, and I know at least three of them by name because they're posting in the comments. So I appreciate I
Well,
appreciate
thank
all
you
of
for listening to our story hour.
yes, thank you for being here. That ultimately these Monday moments, these Ask Brenda things, they initially grew out of PEP being such a hot topic and everybody has questions. But ultimately, there are 150,000 home educating students in Florida, and we want them all to know what their rights are. We want them to feel secure and confident in their choices. We want them to know how it works. So if they're ever questioned or why are your kids out during the day or how come you guys don't do this, that they're fully confident in their answers. They know where to look and where to turn for help if ever needed. Like I said earlier, everything is fine until it's not. And those moments when it's not, you need a place to call. That's what we are. That's what we want to be in focus on. And if you're with us still today, which I see you, I know you are, this is our support page, and I trust that several of you have probably already done this because this is how we're funded. This is how we're going to keep it going moving forward. But if you know someone who's a home educating family and they haven't, even just $5 a month, if they haven't done that yet, please get them to. Please share the word and put it out there. We also have partnerships for vendors. So we've had like an electrician, an electric company who decided, not an electric company, that sounds like Tico, an electrician, an electrical company that decided that they just love home education. They love the freedoms. They love that parents can have their choice and they want to support it. And so they did at $100 a month. And we have visibility options for them to go for them, specifically with people with companies, to go on our recognition wall. And they can come and get recognized. And people who might be looking to do business with them, here's Electrical Works Incorporated, might be looking to do business with people who support the same values that they have, can look on that recognition wall and see. And we've got them listed there by county so that you can look and see maybe who's near you. These are kind of in the order that they came in. So we haven't like alphabetized them or county arranged them or anything like that. We're just building the wall as they come. But we're very thankful to them, so we want to show them for one, but then also we want to say if you know somebody who has not supported yet, share this video with them and let them know, or just talk to them and let them know. Sorry, I was showing my face. I was trying to read comments, but I think up on the screen I have. Anyway, um,
And use, if you're in the area and you can support those businesses, please tell them that you
yeah,
saw their name on the Home
yes,
Education Foundation board and that you homeschool and you appreciate them supporting them. And that's why you're calling to use their company.
because that helps foster the community too. It helps let them know that what they're doing is impactful and meaningful. Aside from us telling them thank you, and that it is, they get to hear it from other people. So all of that kind of matters. We are still trying to raise funds. We haven't hit our goal yet. We haven't hit what we need. So please spread the word and let people know, because it is important. Um, Brenda, before we close out, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I think y'all have
Okay.
done a great job, and thank you for making us more visible in the homeschool community because I can't do marketing. I don't want to do marketing. You know, I came kicking and screaming to this, but I knew it was necessary if we were going to get the word out. And I just am so appreciative of the work that Crystal is doing answering the questions on the PEP. She has a
Absolutely.
lot more uh, insight into the program because she's down in the mix with the parents and can see what's going on where I can't.
Yeah.
My role is limited to the legislation and then the key people who are implementing all of that, and I can help change policies or get things fixed at that level, but I can't answer questions. And Crystal has been amazing,
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Many people have benefited from, I think thousands of people have benefited from just the tiny little adjustments and conversations and calls and getting them up and work that she's done. So we're very
I'm
appreciative.
happy to be happy to be involved and to be,
Good.
able to help. So
Well, without further ado, Jessica Castillo says, I have learned so much. Thank you, Brenda. We are reaping where you have sowed. Sorry if I misspelled anything. And with that, we'll call our stream today to an end. We'll show our sponsors once more, and we want to thank you all for being here and kind of listening. Feel free to share the video. We do put these up on YouTube afterwards, and we leave them up on Facebook. So if you want to share the videos with other people because you thought it was great, go for it. Vicky says, I'm grateful to all three of you. Keep pressing on. We will. Thank you guys for being with us today.
Bye-bye. See you next Monday.